What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. What's up, y'all? This is Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast, your holistic mentor to 6- and 7-figure healers, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are seeking to build a life and a business in alignment with their values, biology, and beyond without sacrificing your health and well-being. Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast. I am super grateful you're here. I am actually recording this episode because I am testing out some technology. I have my little camera set up here. My actual Joe, if you guys don't know Joe, he helps me actually edit the podcasts. He gave me this cool little Ozbot camera that I'm looking at right now. If you're watching on YouTube, it's supposed to create a little bit more clarity. And I'm also speaking into this really cool microphone that sometimes likes to work and sometimes doesn't like to work. So I'm going to do a little test run here and hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm underwater. For those of you who listen to me when I'm underwater, thank you. Super appreciate your loyalty. I also get that when you're listening to this in your car, on your walk, when you're doing stuff, sound really matters, and how someone sounds and how sound comes through is really, really important from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective, from just a listening consciousness perspective. So speaking of sound, let's talk about sound from a healing perspective. Let me shift my microphone here. I'm going to bring this a little bit higher up so I don't have to bend over here. I got to watch my posture. Let's talk about sound. So sound is something that I use on a very regular basis to help clear energy. What the hell do I mean by that? Well, when we think about our bodies, when we think about our health, when we think about health challenges, at the core of our physiology, we are light and sound. That is it, right? I told you in the beginning of this year that this episode, or rather this podcast, this season is going to blow your mind, right? It's going to get meta. Because I think when you can understand these laws of physics and these laws in the universe and how it translates into your daily life, you can feel more empowered in your decisions and know that life is working for you, not against you. So sound, we are light particles and sound waves. We are both particles and waves at an atomic level. If you don't believe me, take a chemistry class. You'll figure out real quickly what we're actually made of. Literally vibrating particles in the universe, which is pretty fucking wild when you think about it. So what happens then when we deviate from the source of who we are, light and sound, right? If the source of who we are is light and sound, then what truly is dis-ease? What truly is pathology? And I'm here to illuminate some of that wisdom to you and bring you into my consciousness so you can start to use sound to your advantage when it comes to healing your own chronic illnesses and stop outsourcing your power to healers, leaders, doctors, practitioners who aren't teaching you this stuff. Myself being one of them, right? My business thrives when I can teach people to be well and they choose to work with me for more teaching them how to heal rather than depending on me to do it for them. Because the reality is, I can't do it for you and no one else can do it for you. Healing comes from the inside out. So in that, when we drift away from the source of who we are, we go from wholeness, right? Light and sound and love, right? That's really all there is, to distortion. The perception of not being whole, dis-ease, right? Subluxation, less than light, literally sub, less than lux, lightation, a state of less than light energy. This is a term that we use within the chiropractic profession of subluxation, literally meaning a distortion in the neurospinal system that then leads to dis-ease. Dis-ease is not disease.
Okay. Dis-ease is dis-ease within the harmonics of the body, i.e. sound, frequency, right? You are frequency. This is not a woo-woo term. Your cells have a vibration. The only reason why your hormones work is through vibration. The only reason why your neurotransmitters work is through vibration, right? If you look at actually how biochemistry works of these little hormones or neurotransmitters that float around your blood that are making their way to cells to activate them to respond and adapt differently, it's all vibration, my friends. The receptor cell on the site of the cell, the receptor has to be vibrating at a frequency in order to attract that neurotransmitter to lock and load and open up the cell's activation to perform the tasks and functions that the cell was designed to do. Well, who designed that cell? Universal intelligence. Your innate intelligence designed the cell where it knows exactly what to do at exactly the right time, at exactly the right cadence, and exactly the right pace. When you're connected and you're interference free and you're not subluxated, you're clear, as we call it. You may hear us use that term in the office. You're clear, you're balanced. Even in my coaching, when you have that, things flow as they were designed. You were designed to be a coherent, harmonic masterpiece of the universe. And so what creates disease? It's those distortions in our perceptions of wholeness. Could be through the experience of physical trauma. Could be through the experience of emotional trauma. Could be through the experience of physiological, technological, biochemical, chemical trauma, right? And trauma, if you go back and listen to old episodes, is the perception of not having enough resources to respond to the energy and information in that given moment. Perceiving that there's more drawbacks and threat from an experience than there are benefits and support. And when we go into that fight or flight response and we perceive that this threat is coming into our system and we don't adapt or we don't have the capacity to respond intelligently, right? Not intelligently, but respond coherently, we create distortion in our physiology. And that distortion, whether it's the musculature or your fascia or your posture, or actually how your brain is wiring to that experience, that leads to that dis-ease. And that dis-ease, right? Muscular tension, autonomic shifting to fight or flight is an intelligent response in the moment. But here's the thing is, unless you have learned to unwind from that trauma, see the gifts of it and evolve, there's part of you, even subconsciously, that carries that baggage into the future. And then what happens is we stack more trauma on top of it, perceived trauma. We stack more moments. And then eventually that health, that beautiful health that we were born with or that our ancestors carried, now it feels like it's so far away. And what happens is we perceive if something happens, oh, I just threw out my back, or I just got this illness out of nowhere. No, my friends, dis-ease is a process just as much as health is. And honestly, it's a moving target. Wholeness is a moving target. So how do we then start to use, I wanted to paint the picture of that, of like, where does health come from? Where does disease come from? How does this actually work in our physiology? And how can we start to work with it rather than becoming a victim of our history? I'm here to teach you how to become a master of your destiny and not a victim of your history. If that doesn't sound like something you want to play the game with, then I'd recommend unsubscribing from this podcast, because I'm here to share a different paradigm with you that your body can heal. It was designed that way to your DNA, right? Into your DNA, into your physiology. You are at the core of it, light and sound and love. That is who you are, right? That is who you are at the core of your being. But what happens is we experience these traumas or whatever, and we forget. So the game of wholeness is really just a process of remembering who you truly are. This is something I go deep into in my Project Lioness Cohort. If you want to learn more about that and join me, I'll drop that in the show notes to apply. But if you really want to become a master and a Jedi of this work, it's pretty cool. And my students would agree. So how do we use sound as one of the dials to start to heal our body? Well, when we have these distortions that happen in our physiology and our emotions, that energy gets locked and loaded on a cellular level. Tension, fascia, stuck mental loops, right? Kind of same thoughts. You cannot be stuck in the mind without being stuck in the body. And so how do we shift this? Well, sound, there's many dials that you can play with: breath, movement, sound, energy, postural shifts, breath, all of that. We teach a lot of that in the office. If you're a practice member, you know what I'm talking about. Like, we start to play with the dials and heal your own body. Sound is one of the core ones that I see people have a little bit of aversion to more than the other ones, because I get it, right? You feel weird maybe making sound, or just like letting out that sigh that maybe you've been holding in all day. But think about it. If something comes your way, like a person or an object, and you maybe want to scream, or like, right? Or like, get away from me, or like, stay back, or like, oh shit, right? That expression of sound, when we don't feel like we have the capacity to do that in the moment, like our toddlers do, we shut down. We shove it in, right? That energy just doesn't disappear. It goes in, right? We hold our tongue, we store it in our vocal cords, we store it in our neck. And like, part of us is like making a sound, but it's not coming out in the auditory fashion. It's staying stuck. That vibration is in the tissues, right? This is where people say the issues are in the tissues. Well, playing with sound is a really, really powerful way to create vibration in your body that actually transmits energy and moves it, that maybe you've been stacking and storing for months, for years, for decades. Because in a moment that you wanted to make sound or mobilize energy, sound is just one dial of mobilization of energy, you didn't feel safe. And so while, yes, it's important to breathe and move, that's one way of mobilizing energy from a frozen, stuck response from a moment in your past. Sound is such a powerful way to start to tap in this. And what I see is, it's sometimes more challenging for women to do this because they feel weird, or they haven't been given permission to take up space or make sound. But think about it. Some of the most pleasurable things, if you know what I'm talking about, you're making sound, right? You know what I'm talking about. You're making sound. And if you hold it in, it's not as pleasurable, right? Like, let's be real. If you're trying to be quiet, suppress it, it's definitely not as pleasurable. You know what I'm talking about. So I've done a lot of videos on this. I've done a lot of trainings on this. I felt really called to bring this into the podcast again, because I know and believe that healing is possible for you. And if you don't believe it in yourself yet, then borrow my belief. So here's one thing you can do from this episode is, when you're maybe doing breath work, or you're laying down and you're doing your workouts or things like that, where can you add a little bit more sound to your life? Where can you start to, if you feel tension in your shoulders, or you feel that anxiety in your gut, or you've had that chronic knee pain, what would it be like to just add a little bit of sound? Just like, like making the sound of the pain. The science of this is that sound is one of the most primitive forms of communication. We know this with babies, right? They're not forming words yet. They're like, right? They're making sound. That's their form of communication. And so this is an opportunity for you to step into that form of communication, because on a cellular level, your cells are trying to communicate with you through pain. And so when you can translate the pain to sound, you actually start to mobilize that stagnancy that could be leading to the physical loops of health challenges, the mental loops of mental challenges, the emotional loops that you keep reprocessing, getting underneath the surface of the thoughts, getting underneath the surface of the emotions, and really just being with the sensation of the challenge, of the pain. And all these dials are interconnected because you're a multidimensional being. Again, if you really want to go deep into this and understand the science and the neurology and learn how to actually work with people in this way, talk to me about my Project Lioness program. Talk to me about my Inspire Method Facilitator program. I promise you it'll be a game changer for the people that you see and your own life, and learning how to become the healer of you, right? Heal thyself. So my homework for you, or my invitation for you, because ultimately this is up to you to embody, is where can you make more sound? Where can you add in just a fraction or a percentage more of sound? Is it listening to music on the way to work and singing a little bit, channeling that energy? Is it laying down and just like letting out that sigh and just let it be heard, and like notice what happens in your body after? Is it speaking more? One of the ways that I channel energy is speaking. So me turning on this podcast, knowing that I've had a lot of energy, I've navigated, using my voice and speaking is one of my greatest values, that I get to move energy in my body and be in my highest values. And you've heard me make some weird sounds on this podcast, right? Permission for you to do the same. And teach your kids too. If they're like, why are you making sound? I'm like, I say like, I'm just moving energy. Like I've had a lot of bound energy in my body. I'm just going to, your dog, if you have dogs, your dogs sigh, right? Your cats meow, big animals, they growl, they make sound with unapologetically. And part of you is an animal too. Okay. So with that, here's a little soundbite, a Lioness soundbite for you to don't be afraid to make some more sound and ask the question, how can I allow sound to serve me in my life? And come back to the source of who I am, which is light, sound, and love. All right, my friends, thanks for tuning in this Lioness soundbite, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.